And today, my special guest is Amy Loeffler, and she is an award winning food writer. So, we're really grateful to have her on the show. And she's going to talk about a subject that I don't think I've ever had anyone on talk about salt, other than like people mentioning Himalayan salt and all. But I know she has some really interesting stories. But first, I do want to mention, Amy, tell everyone about the award you were just chosen for.
Sure, Maria. Thanks so much for having me on. So I'm very excited to announce that I will be included in the next anthology of Best American Food Writing that is available for pre-order online and
Yes.
will drop October 17th, I
Uh-huh.
believe.
Wow, that's wonderful. Really excited to hear that too. And I know you told me you were writing about potentially a book about salt and a lot of interesting things about it, but I know we were going to talk about this incident in that happened in Italy, right? In the what did you say, 1300s?
Yes, yeah, thanks for asking about that. So one of the things I love about salt is that it is in many ways this mundane mineral that inhabits our daily lives. But it's also very cosmic. They find it in outer space, and they recently just found it on an asteroid in the journal Nature Astronomy. There was recently an article published about that, which has major implications for um, life on, or the study of life on Earth, because originally
Yes.
it was thought that comets brought water to planet
Mhm.
Earth, but now there's evidence of actual NaCl, sodium chloride, being found on asteroids,
Oh,
which
wow.
previously they were not thought of in that way.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, to get back to Italy here on Earth, what we're talking about really is the Battle of Chioggia. And so this it was a very important battle in really the formation of these two rival cities, Genova and Venice. So what happened was that there were salt stores outside of Venice in this little town, Chioggia,
Mhm.
which was basically like a small town, like planned on a grid.
Uh-huh.
And what happened was the Genovese thought that they were going to very easily take this little town and march onward. Well, they were in boats, they weren't marching, but and sail onward into
Mhm.
Venice. And this happened in June of 1380. And
Wow.
that's not what happened, actually. What happened was the Venetians put up a fight, and ultimately the Genovese were starved out of the port.
Wow.
So there was, a lot of language. Ultimately, when the Genovese came to Chioggia and they thought things were locked up, the Venetians tried to negotiate with them, and they didn't have it. In fact, there's a very famous quote by I believe the Genoan military leader,
Uh-huh.
who said that we're not going to negotiate with you until we've bridled the horses of San Marco, which are the horses that guard
Yes.
Venice. um,
Yes.
so this battle was fought, over trade routes and other things, but there was this small city that had very important salt stores, and it was very important in Italian history because it really allowed Venice to emerge as a victor and the much larger power after that battle. So in terms of Italian history, it was very significant and very
Yes.
much salt related.
Yes. Well, you probably know that salt was used as currency, right? It was used way back. It was used as currency also, just kind of like gold or silver, it was used as currency. So it was a really, really important commodity. And so much so that in Florence, the bread that they make in Florence, especially in the city of Florence, the tradition is when you go to Florence, if you get the traditional bread, it's bread with no salt, because the people were so
Oh,
poor at one time that they could not put salt in their bread. So now it's a traditional bread, and people look for that bread just because it's kind of linked to the history of Florence. I think that was probably when the De Medicis were under, they were under the De Medicis, and no one had money. So yes, it's very, very, very interesting. Really very interesting story.
yeah. And in fact, just to piggyback on your comment, that is
Yes.
in fact where the expression like to be worth your salt, that's where it comes from how Roman soldiers were paid.
Yes, 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 exactly, exactly. Really, really interesting. So, what I know, I was looking at your background, and you've written for lots and lots of different publications. Tell us some of the publications you've written for.
Sure, thank you for asking that. So recently, I have written for some local publications here in Southwestern Virginia, where I'm currently based.
Uh-huh.
So the Roanoke Rambler, I wrote a story about how cocktail culture has finally made its appearance here in Roanoke. Um, because Roanoke is very much known as a beer town. There's a lot of breweries here,
Yes.
and we have some really, there's a lot of really nice restaurants here that are very much investing in their cocktail programs now.
Oh, so that's why then there's this culture developing.
Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And then like nationally, I have also written for Whetstone magazine, which is where the Salt article
I
came
see.
from for
Uh-huh.
the food anthology that will be published in October.
Uh-huh. Oh,
So
wow.
that, yeah.
So any like interesting, do you re have you like do you review restaurants or just like any other interesting topics that I'm sure they're all interesting because they're all related to food. Any other trending something or interesting topics?
Yeah, that's a great question. So something that is kind of currently the gem here in Roanoke,
Yes.
is a cafe called Stock. And it's a cafe that really focuses on Nordic cuisine, but it is actually housed in a refurbished fire station from the early 1900s. And it's also part of a very innovative business model that speaks to the furniture manufacturing industry in southwestern Virginia. And that article actually has yet to be published, but it's one of the more recent things that I have written, and I think would be of real interest to your listeners.
Definitely.
And and so my perspective on that is that there's kind of this reimagining of like the furniture manufacturing industry happening in this very innovative business model that partners with a restaurant where guests can actually sit, the tables that you sit at are the tables that they sell in the furniture place, which is housed in the fire station,
I
which is
don't want
also,
to interrupt you. I don't mean to interrupt you, but this
yeah,
just comes to
sure.
mind. So, do you think that has anything to do with IKEA? Because Nordic, IKEA, and it's kind of like, when you go there, you do eat
Um,
there and they have everything. But anyway, I'm sorry. I'm just starting to think that could be.
yeah, no, and I joked with the chef who is a self-taught chef. His name is Jeff Farmer. He's been the force behind some very successful restaurants in Roanoke. And he actually did mention that one of his customers came in and and I asked him the same thing when I interviewed him
Right.
because I grew up in the DC area in the 80s when,
Uh-huh.
big box stores and factory outlets were a huge thing. And that was
Yes.
immediately what I thought of as well was IKEA.
Yes.
and and yeah, so it is funny to make that association. But the furniture that's made by this company called Texture,
Mhm.
is actually made to endure. Like it's very well made,
Oh, okay.
of
It's
high
not like
quality,
yeah, it's, yes,
and so is the food at stock. It's Nordic focused, and
right.
but a lot of ingredients actually do come from say the Southeast. Like
Uh-huh.
shrimp dishes would have shrimp from North Carolina. I know he also works with a fishery where he sources sturgeon from, and that's Marshallburg Farms in North Carolina. And then I'm trying to think of some other things, but the chef Jeff Farmer, his whole thing is he really wants to introduce people to caviar,
Mhm.
and not have it be viewed as this luxury item. So
Right, right. Wow.
oh
That's
yeah.
interesting. So that sounds like a concept that they're maybe starting in Roanoke. And it sounds like something that, because that to me sounds like a great way, restaurants are, their profits are really down. But, you have a restaurant like that where it's not just focused on selling the food, you're also selling the furniture. And it's a whole concept, right? It's a whole theme with the furniture and the food, and that it's in an old firehouse, which is interesting too. So that's really very interesting. Do you know of, like, is that the only location where they're doing this? Because I guess it sounds like that's kind of the launching pad for that whole concept.
Yeah, that's a very astute comment. And I right now, this location is the only location.
Mhm.
It's very much tied to the local economy, and
Right.
the company is very invested in providing good quality local jobs
Wow.
for the Roanoke population.
Yes.
And and I toured the furniture factory last month, and yeah, they have very dedicated employees who have
Oh,
been.
so the furniture is made there in Roanoke? Oh,
Yeah,
that's wonderful. So it's locally
yeah.
made furniture and food, which is
Mhm.
great. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that definitely, that sounds like a model, a business model that will some in the near future, I'm sure will be really popular and become replicated. So, oh, that's interesting.
Right, right. It's something, it's kind of a concept. It's not exactly new, because big chains like Restoration Hardware,
Oh,
like
yes, that's true.
they do, it's kind of the similar thing, but I think the thing that's interesting about the furniture company Texture and their relationship with the cafe and the hotel is that, as you stated, it's a very innovative business concept and
Right.
very much wants to support the local economy in that
Right, right.
way.
In
So
that, yeah, and that sounds like that's what might make them a little different too, other than it's more upscale than say in IKEA,
yeah.
but really supporting
Right.
more of the local economy, and the products are made, are made local as well, which is definitely very interesting. So, oh, that's great. I, had not even heard of that, but that's interesting. So it sounds like you're
Yeah.
saying, it's similar to Restoration Hardware, but it's a step above, because then, and I'm not real familiar with Restoration Hardware, so I don't know if they have like eating places in their stores, but this sounds like then something kind of a step above the Restoration Hardware.
Yeah. And it kind of is in the sense that like and so they do in I personally haven't visited Restoration Hardware eating
Right.
places. I know that they do the thing that's really fun about Texture
Uh-huh.
and the establishment here in Roanoke is that they encourage people when they're at the cafe to walk, because the furniture kind of experience room is right there. So they don't mind if you take this very like red wine staining like glass of wine around and like sit on the furniture and hang out with your friends, which you can't do, I don't believe, at Restoration Hardware.
Probably not. I know most places don't let you do that. Oh, wow, that's great. So you experience, like I said, I think it's a whole experience, the furniture and the food together.
Mhm.
So
You're
that's
exactly
great.
right.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I love that. I love that. So any new projects are you working on a book, or that was that anthology that's being published in October?
Oh, so yeah, so the anthology is actually a collection of stories
Uh-huh.
from Mariner books. So there's my story, Marion Nessel, who
Uh,
you may be aware of, who is the nutrition professor at NYU. Like she's also going to be featured in the collection along with a lot of other like very fabulous writers. So
oh,
I feel
that's
very
great.
privileged and
Definitely.
to be involved
Definitely.
with
Yes,
that.
that's wonderful. So tell everybody, where can they find like information out on it? So it's an anthology, and you said that will be published in October.
Yes. And if you go to, I believe it's Mariner Books, you can, and if you Google Best American Food Writing,
Oh, okay.
2023, you'll get a link to pre-order it.
Okay. Okay. So people
So,
can look there. And do you have your own website? Can people find you anywhere or no?
yes, I do. Although I have been very remiss about updating my website,
It's
but
just really, I understand. I was going to say, I understand because it is so time consuming. And when you're doing what you're doing, you just, it's like you don't have the time to go and update it on the website because you're busy doing, what the website is talking about, but you have to do that. So I understand. So I was just trying to get a way for people to, to find you.
Sure. So my website is called Marinate on This.
Okay. I like
So and I would love it if people would want to visit. And you can find a way to contact me. Like I have if you go to the webpage,
right.
there's definitely my email is listed there if anyone would like to get in contact.
Okay, great. That's great. That's great. Thank you so much, Amy, and much congratulations on being selected. That's really very, very exciting. So, and hopefully we'll hear from you in the future also back again. Because it sounds like you really find some very interesting food related topics. So I'd love to have you on again. Keep us
Thank you
posted
so
on
much.
everything.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.
You're welcome, Amy. Thanks again.
Bye.